This is a video that shows how Liz was able to resurrect Philip's banjo after it lay quiet for more than 50 years. So this shows how she went about it, and a little bit of playing at the end.
I wish I could take the neck off.
You will.
I'm crazy. I'm afraid to take it off. It doesn't go back on.
You'll get it back on. Wow, look at that. Whew. Wow.
I did that one.
Beautiful.
Those two.
Beautiful.
The neck came off.
Is it that bar there? You just back that off of there and it'll come off?
The
From
bar
that
comes
end.
out, but this, I have to loosen that, I guess.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
This goes through a hole in this.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, that's the truss rod. By the way, I had no idea if it was a truss rod or not. Well, you don't have to do it right this second. You probably need better light here too, Johnny.
You got a nice light.
But you're in the shadow. Me trying to be helpful.
I would like to take the rim off, though. This, I think...
Why not?
I don't know which rim is the rim.
I'll tell you, unless you took all those off of there, you wouldn't do it.
But this...
Notice the neck is completely off the banjo at this point.
Stop taking pictures. This one might be attached to this.
At one point she hit a snafu because there was a missing tuning peg at the head of the banjo. And we took it to a master luthier nearby by the name of Paul Unkert. And he helped her out with that. And as we were leaving, he said she was doing such a great job she could consider herself a luthier now. Here you see her at work again. Listen for it. Helpful Hannah again. Here you see she's got it all back together again with strings on it, and even Philip's strap is still on it. So that was only appropriate that she be the first one to put it on after all these years. The job was fairly complete at this point, except there were a few little odds and ends still to do, so that's next. Liz searched online and was able to find a banjo just like Philip's. This is the distinctive headstock on the banjo. You can see the decal there. It says Tullio, that's the manufacturer, and you see a cover on the truss rod there. Both of those items were missing on Philip's banjo. No label, no truss rod cover. So those were two challenges that Liz faced also. The major challenge on the truss rod cover was that it would have to be curved, and she didn't have any materials to do that, so she thought about it and eventually came up with leather. So we went to a local Michael's shop and she bought a piece of nice leather to use for that purpose. The final challenge was the label at the headstock, so we set about trying to think of a design for that. There's not much real estate there, so it couldn't be too extensive. So this one was one that I used a photograph of Phil, who was taken from when we were at Megan's wedding. And it had already been named the PAR, so we played on that PAR with EHR to show that she was a luthier on this project. But it went through a number of iterations before we hit upon the final one, the final design, which is this one. You can see the sticker there at the top. We found a company online that supplies those, so we sent them the design and they sent us back the sticker that we could use on the banjo. And you also see the piece of leather that she used to cover that truss rod. Very clever. Used little teeny tiny nails, I guess. I don't know. Quite an undertaking, quite an accomplishment. Here's about a minute or so where you can see her in action.
What is that polish?
Not only wrestling with the banjo itself, but also dealing with a helpful Hannah standing nearby.
You will.
Crazy. I'm afraid to take it off. Go back on.
You'll get it back on. Wow, look at that. Whew. Wow.
I did that one.
Beautiful.
Those two.
Beautiful.
The neck came off.
Is it that bar there? You just back that off of there and it'll come off?
The
From
bar
that end.
comes out, but this, I have to loosen that, I guess.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
This goes through a hole in this.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
this,
that's the truss rod. Well, you don't have to do it right this second. You probably need better light here too, Johnny.
I got a nice light.
But you're in the shadow.
First attempt with Philip's banjo. Wait a minute. Thanks to Liz for getting it back in playing shape. It was pretty not in good shape, and she worked at it, and the par is in business. If I'm not, at least the banjo is. We'll see how it goes. Okie doke. You'll remember when Philip was learning to play the banjo, he had a Pete Seeger album. I think it was called Learning to Play the Banjo with Pete Seeger. And he'd be upstairs in our room playing the record and playing the banjo and playing along with it and trying the best he could to learn it. Ultimately, I don't know that he ever played a song on it, but he enjoyed trying it anyway. And the joke that sticks in everybody's mind is that he would be playing upstairs, playing and playing and playing, and Dad would shout up the stairs saying, "Phil, it sounds great, but what does it mean?" Which couldn't have been very encouraging. Oddly enough, at Philip's funeral, when Patty was giving his talk after the gospel, he was telling stories about Philip, and that's one of the stories he told. And it's a story that I had ready to tell in my talk after communion. So Patty's telling nice stories about Philip, and he says, and I remember when Philip was learning to play the banjo, and Al would call up the stairs, "Phil, it sounds great, but what does it mean?" And I remember sitting in the front pew saying to Patty, kind of sotto voce, but enough for other people to hear, "Well, there goes my banjo story. Thanks a lot." And that's the way that went. But it's a memory that sticks out for me anyway. And I'm glad to have his banjo here. Anyway, I'll give it a try and learn something on it anyway and see how it goes. Okie doke. Oh, the par, by the way. I have a mandolin back there called the Lore because a fellow who made mandolins for Gibson, they were famous for their mandolins, and this fellow left the company and started his own mandolin company, and his last name was Lore. So instead of being called a Gibson, which is what Gibson mandolins were called. He called his the lore. So in trying to think of, for Liz's resurrection of this banjo, I tried to think of a name for it, and took Philip's initials, Philip Aloysius Ryan, and put them together for the par. The par. So, and it's got a little shamrock on there to commemorate Philip's love for the Irish culture. We found a company that made stickers online, so we sent them that design, and they sent us back the sticker, the par. God bless Philip and all his family that are with him. Okay.